This is the Ielts listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1.
You will hear the secretary of a social club telephoning a tourist information office to get information for a group visit to the town of Tidborough. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, this is Tidborough Tourist Office, Derek speaking. How can I help you?
Good afternoon. My name's Clara Swift. I'm the secretary of a social club and we're planning a visit to Tidborough.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to ask you some questions, if I may, to help with our plans.
Of course. We're here to help.
Now, we're thinking of staying in the youth hostel, as we'll be a group and it's quite cheap.
Yes, and comfortable too.
But could you tell me how far outside the centre it is?
Oh, it's not too bad. It's only 1 kilometre from the station, which is very convenient, and 2 kilometres from the very centre of town. There's a frequent bus service.
That doesn't sound too bad. Actually, I've tried phoning them but had no reply.
You can check out everything you need to know if you go to www.cheapstay.com. That's their own site. It's quite new. And you could email them with your requirements directly from it.
Oh, that sounds good, thank you. We'll be staying in the 3rd week of March. Will there be any special events going on then?
Yes, that includes the 22nd, doesn't it? Good. That's when the street festival is held. It's great fun. Lots going on. It's held every year.
OK.
And when that's finished, if you've any energy left, you and your group might enjoy a concert we're putting on.
Is it classical music or rock?
Well, quite a mixture, actually. The point is that it's all performed by local musicians, and between them, they'll be playing most things.
It sounds a little strange, but I guess it could be interesting. It seems we've chosen a good week to come. Is there anything else on?
Oh, yes, indeed. The City Museum, which was recently completely restored, often has interesting exhibitions. There are some weird and wonderful modern paintings at the moment. That's a good exhibition. Then, opening on March the 24th, when you'll be here, it changes to natural history. I'd recommend it.
Oh, I've made a note of that. Now, some of our group are quite young, and they may prefer to do things that they feel are more active than walking round museums and so on. What will they be able to do?
Throughout March, in fact, the sports centre is going to be closed. But the swimming pool will remain open, and there's the park for general relaxation.
That sounds all right.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
And were you planning to go on any excursions while you were here?
Yes, I was going to ask you. I gather there's a very picturesque train journey out along the coast?
The Beach Express. Yes, it's lovely. It's an old-fashioned train. Not an express at all, in fact, but it chugs along, giving you marvellous views.
Does it go often?
No, it's just a tourist special, really. But it sets off in the morning at 9:30, and it's very popular, so I'd get there no later than 9:15 if I were you. The station opens at 9, so you can get a coffee or something while you wait.
It sounds lovely. And for tickets?
Well, as I say, it may be crowded at the station, so it's probably more convenient to get them beforehand from us at the tourist office. The youth hostel may sell them too. You'd have to check that.
OK, I will, thanks. How much are tickets?
£5, although students get 20% off, and if there are more than 10 of you travelling together, you get 15% off, so it's very reasonable.
Yes, that's not too bad. And is it a long ride?
Not really. I think it's about 3 hours actually in the train. You'll be back for lunch about 4 hours later. It stops twice for half an hour so you can stretch your legs, have a little stroll on one of the beaches.
I see. Well, you've been very helpful. Thank you.
Not at all. I hope you enjoy your visit. Contact us any time.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a director of Hawkins, a large department store, giving an introductory talk to a group of temporary staff on their first day at the company. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 13.
Hello everybody and welcome to Hawkins. I very much hope you will enjoy working here and indeed that some of you may take the opportunity to join our permanent staff. Now, my purpose this morning is to give you a short overview of Hawkins and a few pointers about working here. Then I'll hand over to Celia, Head of Human Resources, to begin the training proper. Right, now we've seen quite a mixed history in sales recently at Hawkins. 5 years ago, we saw the beginning of a success period as sales climbed at an exciting rate, but then they went flat again for a few years, although we're delighted that they've recovered in the last year to rise again, so the future looks bright. As a company, we have to watch and be proactive about where these sales are coming from. All of you here will be allocated to different departments, but you may be interested to know where your area stands in relationship to others. Hawkins was traditionally basically a clothing retailer, and clothes remain an important part of our business, but over recent years we've seen that reduce as food and electrical have both grown, leaving us equally balanced on all fronts at the present time. This is a situation we'd be pleased to maintain, although the general increase in food spending is predicted to affect all major players in our sector. Well, that's us. What about you, as temporary staff? Where do you fit in? Any business that operates in a changing climate must rely heavily on contributions from a flexible proportion of its staff, and Hawkins is no exception. Last year, we recruited temporary staff into every department, and this year we've done that again, actually increasing the numbers, and we expect to take on an even higher proportion next year. So you'll be playing an important part in our success.
Before you hear the next part of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
We regard the Hawkins approach to the retail business as something special. Our mission statement, the guiding idea behind everything we do, is based on quality and is phrased creating value for customers. And this belief applies to every customer and every purchase, however large or small. Happy customers means good business for us, and your main aim must always be to keep customers happy. If any kind of problem or complaint arises, don't try to resolve it yourselves or simply leave it to a colleague, but get the assistance of your line manager. It's his or her responsibility to sort it out. A properly resolved problem will mean we get a loyal customer for life, and that's why we need to make sure that everyone who shops here feels they have had a positive experience, not just a routine transaction. We like to remind customers that everything we sell in Hawkins is high quality. It's the basis of our advertisements. But keep customers informed. Let them know about special offer products. To keep yourself up to date about these and all the other aspects of the company, please look carefully through the newsletter that we publish each month. And something else you'll need to do regularly is to talk with your section supervisor, and you do this in your progress meetings, which will be every Thursday. OK? Right, just a few things and then I'll hand over. I think you were all asked for details of your certificates when you filled in your initial application form. Can you make sure that you provide the Human Resources Office with copies of them by the end of the week? There's a pile of information videos on the table at the back there, and I'd like you to take one each. And please make sure you watch it carefully when you get home this evening. It contains lots of important facts and advice. Will you also pick up your security pass by the end of the day from the office on the 4th floor, as you'll need it to get in tomorrow? Don't forget you'll need it to obtain your staff discount when you make any purchases. OK, that really is it from me, so now, Celia, if you'd like to take over.
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3.
You are going to listen to a conversation between 3 university students, Alice, Paul and Michelle. They are discussing various aspects of an upcoming biology assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, Alice. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Paul. Where are you going with all those books?
Well, I'm preparing for my marine studies paper.
Really? What are you doing your paper on? I haven't even started mine.
Well, since I've always been interested in communication, I wanted to take a closer look at how aquatic animals communicate.
Communicates? Really, Paul? You think that's interesting?
Well, yes, Alice. Actually, it's been much more interesting than I had expected it would be. I'm finding the information fascinating. I bet you'd be surprised at some of the things I've learned.
Yeah, like what?
Well, much of the world is covered by water, but it wasn't really until the first third of the 20th century that people even began to explore the depths of the ocean. Prior to its exploration, scientists just thought of it as a completely silent world. Of course, today we know it is full of sounds.
Such as?
Well, all kinds of living things in the ocean, from prawns to whales, call back and forth to each other.
How do we know that prawns talk to one another?
Good question. The answer is we listen to them. How scientists do it is through a special device called a hydrophone. Now, what a hydrophone does is convert the sound energy into electrical energy. It's a very clever device.
Kind of like a water telephone?
Well, yes. Quite like that, except the communication is only one way.
Sounds more like spying on animals to me.
Well, I suppose it is to a certain degree. Scientists can hear all kinds of sounds. Grunting, crackling, buzzing. It turns out that the ocean is quite a noisy place. Many underwater sounds have been identified, but even more still await classification. Fish in a public aquarium are quite, well, talkative. So scientists have been able to record their sounds and match them with mystery calls heard from the open sea.
So who's the noisiest in the underwater world? I'll bet it's the dolphin.
You're right, the dolphin is noisy. But by far the most widespread and persistent noisemakers are the smaller animals living in the sea. Not fish, but an animal that lives on the sea floor and grows no more than about 5 centimetres. Here, have a look at this table I've started.
Ah, I see. The snapping shrimp is the noisiest sea creature. This is interesting. It makes its sharp snapping sound with its enlarged claw, which also functions like a water pistol.
Yes, I was reading millions of these animals just offshore have been known to frighten people walking along the beach in Japan.
And this is interesting. It says here that seahorses in an aquarium made such a loud noise that people could hear them from across the room. These little creatures are amazing.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Say, Paul, your early research has really prompted me to get started on my own paper. You look like you've already done quite a lot of work on it, but the assignment isn't due for at least another month. Is that right?
Let's see, Michelle. I think you may be a little wrong there. Let me get my class folder and we'll have a look.
I know that our class participation is worth 30%, but what's this assignment worth? Isn't it 40%?
Here it is. Yes. Actually, it's worth 30%. It's the second assignment due later on that's worth 40%. It says here, okay, there are 3 pieces of assessment. There's the 2 assignments and the in-class feedback on student oral presentations, which forms part of assignment 2. Now it says that the first written assignment is composed of 3 parts.
Yes, I recall the professor talking about those, especially the word length for part 1. The research essay, it's 1200, isn't it? It's due in week 6?
Yes, that's correct for part 1, but only 800 for part 2, the field study, which is due in week 7.
Oh, that's bad news. I thought I had much more time than that. I don't know how I could have been so wrong. I guess I need to purchase a diary or I'm going to get left behind.
Yes, I write all my due dates on a monthly calendar which hangs on the wall next to my desk. I found that this has helped me to stay organised. I usually divide the project into weeks. Each week, I set aside some time for all of my assignments. For example, Part 3, the report on findings, isn't due till week 9, but I've already started working on it.
Wow, I'm impressed. I guess you lead a pretty worry-free life.
Not at all. It just means I get a little more sleep than most students around the due date of the assignment.
Well, Paul, you certainly have inspired me. Yeah, me too. I'll be purchasing a desk calendar as soon as I get a chance.
Well, I'm off. Alice, Michelle, it was great talking to both of you. All the best with your assignments.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4.
You are going to listen to a talk from a horse expert, Dr. Alan Sampson. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hello everyone. It's my pleasure to talk to you today, and I hope that my experience will help you as you choose your course of study here at the university. There are a number of key areas that I want to highlight in my talk with you today. Firstly, I hope to show that there are real career opportunities in the equine or horse industry. Also, I want to point out the qualifications you'll need in order to find employment within the industry. A lot of people look at horse training and other equine activity as being a task that can be done by anyone. I hope to show you today that this is far from true by pointing out some of the typical tasks that those employed within the horse industry are expected to carry out on a regular basis. I think you'll see that our work is far from a simple activity and requires discipline and dedication. Our riding school for young riders and an in-depth look at the principles of dressage, the French word meaning training, I won't have time for today, but we'll discuss in later sessions. And although beyond the scope of my talk today, breeding is also an incredibly interesting area of study which I look forward to sharing with you at a later date. Perhaps I should begin my talk by giving you a broad brush overview of the equine industry and where it's headed. Today, the industry is a multi-million-pound concern. Many areas of the horse or thoroughbred industry, as it is often called, are expected to continue to expand as part of the national growth trend in leisure industries. The large investment of the Middle Eastern countries in the 1980s and the more recent investments from the Japanese has had a large influence in the development of the current strong market for both racing and breeding stock here in England. Currently, the thoroughbred industry is generating more than £900 million per year in exports alone. As you can imagine, opportunities exist in many branches of the thoroughbred industry. In fact, in a number of areas, the industry is really expanding. Here in England, around 50,000 people are employed in the primary equine industry and a further 20,000 in ancillary industries. Of course, as with all other industries, practical experience is essential to prove ability and commitment. Although I said the employment outlook for those working in the equine industry is favourable, employers are increasingly looking for more experience and higher qualifications. Individuals intending to take up study often ask me which courses I recommend. Well, there is a good selection of courses to choose from. Personally, when I began in the industry, I enrolled in a part-time certificate in equine management course. It's a good way to gain a general overview of the industry, but offers only minimal career opportunities for graduates. The Bachelor of Equine Science and Thoroughbred Management courses offer a more in-depth look at specific learning areas. Horse riding theory, grooming and saddling are covered, as well as the more scientific areas such as the history and characteristics of breeds, my current area of research, as well as such topics as anatomy and safety in horse handling. From this degree, students can choose to undertake postgraduate studies. By far, the two most common employment areas for university graduates within the equine industry is equitation, which is, by definition, the act or art of riding a horse, and horse training and management, which involves such diverse activities as instruction, stable upkeep, and horse show entries. For those of you looking for long-term, secure employment within the industry, I recommend undertaking some kind of educational coursework. These days, just to be a stable hand, job seekers are presenting with college certificates, which are increasingly becoming the minimum level of education. Working in racehorse stud management, grassland management, and equine exercise and nutrition requires a Bachelor of Science. And no longer will the bachelor's degree suffice when it comes to specialised equine health and research. Only postgraduates or PhDs are now finding employment in these kinds of areas. I'd now like to take a brief look at the degree to which...
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the Ielts test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.